Hey Sagittarius, how's it going? My name's Alex. I think the Oracle and I have some interesting stuff for you today. When I was meditating and tuning into your radio station, I first heard just a simple sentence: a flame of fire and a tongue of fire. I'm not exactly sure what the difference between a flame and a tongue of fire is, but sometimes tongue obviously represents speaking about something. So a flame of fire can be the energy to do something, and a tongue of fire can be saying something that is rooted in truth, particularly a spiritual truth. Tongues of flame can be representative of someone who has a great deal of spiritual knowledge and is able to articulate it through language. And then I got an image of a flame, a pretty long, tall, like silky smooth flame, just kind of floating in space, or just in this like empty sort of blackness, and a red ring, like a halo of energy that went up the flame, then expanded and went back down to the bottom, then contracted and went back up, and so it was making this sort of donut shape, and it just kept doing it over and over and over again. It was pretty cool looking. I have no idea what it means. It's just maybe giving energy to a flame. You know, I saw no fuel source for this flame. It wasn't like a piece of wood. It wasn't like a gas stove or anything like that. It was just a flame in the middle of space. So maybe this is like something coaxing the flame or giving fuel to it. Something feeding your tongue of fire. I'm not sure. I don't know, maybe it has some significance to you, but we'll develop it further. And I pulled an I Ching hexagram for you. Hexagram number 7, or multitude, changing to hexagram 29, or darkness. So the 5th line is changing. And here we have an image of earth over water. Those are the elements. It generally makes me think of like earth flowing, or water being collected like under the earth, like a cistern or an aquifer, something like that. Underground water systems, underground rivers, maybe sewage systems also come to mind. Not sure. Maybe your basement's flooded, I hope not, but check your sump pump. Maybe you should check your sump pump today. Just make sure it's working. But basically, this hexagram is indicative of a teacher who deserves respect. Someone who has gotten to a leadership position because they deserve it, not because of nepotism, not because of politics, not because of opportunism or anything like that, but a person has been given a leadership position by the people who are being led. And it feels like this is you. For most of you, I think there's a small number of you watching who there is someone else in this particular situation that you might have to step aside for because they might have a better solution for what's going on, but I'll explain that. But essentially this is like a leader who deserves to lead, someone who's trustworthy, someone who's experienced, you know, the senior member, someone who's got a lot of knowledge, and you know, who got there based on their reputation, based on their noble characteristics. So if this is you in this situation, it's important not to stumble at this point, not to forget how you got there. You got there because of your noble characteristics and your trustworthy attitude, your trustworthy actions and personality. So don't forget that. Don't squander that. You got there based on that. And if you start acting selfishly or brashly at this point, you could find your leadership position very quickly revoked. And that wouldn't be good for anybody, because the people in this position, you have the insight and the knowledge and the skills to solve a particular problem that's occurring. So there's an issue here where something unexpected occurred. Now, in the classic, in the I Ching, this changing line at the 5th place is indicative of birds of passage that have come into your field. Now, birds of passage are not something you want on your farmland, because they will eat everything, and including the seeds and they'll take it all away and leave your fields desolate. It's like an invasion. So something might have come into your life like an invasion force of some kind, or a force of desolation. Hopefully it's not extreme, God forbid, but there's something that kind of just got dropped on your plate, and now you and probably a handful of people have to deal with it. And at this time, because of this, your actions ought to be defensive, right? Whatever that means. Obviously, in a militaristic sense, it means what it means. It means defensive action. In a more social or economic sense, it could mean like collecting yourself, collecting your resources, putting them in the right way, acting with gracefulness and charity, acting with understanding and friendliness and gentleness, kind of bobbing and weaving, putting up shields, putting up boundaries, right? And not doing anything on the offensive, not doing anything too overt, but taking decisive defensive actions with the reorganization of your relationships or finances or whatever it is. And that's what's appropriate. And at this time, it's probably too difficult to go alone. When you get this hexagram, it means you need to take advice from people, surround yourself with good, trustworthy people, good, experienced people who have good advice, to ask for good advice and follow it. It could be to collect your, like your spiritual family. Maybe you work with spirits in the occult sense, and you just need to call on those forces, your ancestors, your guardian angels, that sort of thing. And going it alone right now is probably not the best idea. You could probably do it, but it would just be a lot of work and would be a bit risky and would be very taxing on you, perhaps particularly on your mental health. So I'm getting this idea that there's someone, at least one person, who has expert advice. There's someone who's really, really experienced about this problem, who has had this problem and has very good advice, has gone through it and knows how to get through it. Like, this is what I meant before. If like this fifth line, if this leader, if it's not you, if it's someone else, the point is the most senior person, not necessarily the oldest. When I say senior, I mean the person with the most experience and the best advice is the one who should lead the people, your group, yourself, through this problem. It could be a part of yourself that has experience in this, like a part of yourself that you kind of forgot about, that you need to allow to come to the forefront and be like, okay, you show me what to do, this part of me who has experienced this, and let that part of your personality be dominant for a time. But we might be tempted to be democratic with this process, with this defensive process, with this change up you're dealing with. The advice is to not be democratic. Don't ask for the opinions of everybody involved. I mean, you can ask for them. It's important to know what they want to do, obviously. But the point is that sometimes there are right ways of doing things and wrong ways of doing things. And you can't vote because the people could vote on the wrong way of doing something because they just have never experienced it before. They might have theories about how it should work out, but those theories mean nothing compared to experience, compared to the people who have actually experienced this thing. Their advice is what needs to be followed, and it could go against the grain, it could go against the majority, but the person who has that most experience is the correct person, that is the best advice, and that should be the advice to be followed. Now, of course, if this doesn't resonate, like, do what you think is the right thing to do. This is just a reading here that you found on the internet. But listen carefully to those who have gone through it before. And even if it sounds counterintuitive, if they have successfully gone through it before, there's a good chance that they're right about it. Even though every book you've read might be contrary to their opinion, every person around you might say, that's stupid and crazy, there's no way that will work. But the point is you know this person went through it, you actually know that for a fact, and you know they're still there to talk to you about it. So it doesn't matter about the books you've read. It doesn't matter about what all those other people are saying who didn't experience it. What matters is the opinion of the person who did experience it. That's the only thing that matters here. And it will solve this issue. So surround yourself with trustworthy people who give good advice and follow that good advice. So let's develop this a little bit further. I'm going to spin a coin. It'll point to one of these 24 symbols. That'll be the aspect of reality that we're going to focus on. These all represent something about life. All right, Oracle. What does Sagittarius need to know today? The Messenger. I have it depicted with a little feather, symbol of a little feather. The aspect is the messenger. This is sort of a mercurial aspect. This would be associated with the planetary spirit or sphere of Mercury. Hermes, Thoth, that sort of deity. If you're into the Greco-Roman, Egyptian, Chaldean type stuff, there are all sorts of mercurial deities out there. Loki, if you're into the northern stuff. But this is about communication, messages, communion with the spirit world. Could be about banking transactions and money transfers. You know, it could be. But here we have, it's very, very high up. It's near the sphere of divinity here on my little divination system. So generally when we get this, we're talking about spiritual communication. We're talking about connection to higher realms. So what does Sagittarius need to know? So yeah, now I'm getting back that flame of fire and tongue of fire. Yeah, I think this situation here has a deep spiritual connotation, and there's a person that has really good psychological or spiritual experience and good advice therefrom, and therefore, Eight of Wands wanted to peek out. Another symbol of communication. Okay, we've got the Moon. Neptunian, Piscean kind of a card here. Or Jupiter, yeah, there's some Jupiter in there. In the classic sense before they knew about Neptune. But yeah, in this deck there's a scarab beetle that has crab claws. It's kind of trippy down at the bottom there. Again, that's a interesting way to see it, because a scarab beetle represents like the brain and the two hemispheres of the brain, and when its wings are out like that, it's like spiritualized thinking, like a spiritualized mind, not a mundane, lower materialistic mind, but the higher mind, right? And coupled with the crabs there, the crab claws, it's like a hybrid of heart and feeling with transcendental thoughts. So there's some hidden thing here that's probably causing this problem that you've run into. There's like some mysterious, almost intangible, unseen root of this issue. And a lot of our problems can originate in the spiritual world, some sort of psychological hang-up we have, or some sort of spiritual impulse that is manifesting in the material world improperly. And these are good problems to have because their solutions are also in the spiritual world. And when we work with our imaginations, we can begin to spiritualize our thoughts. And when we put both hemispheres of the brain together, the logical and analytical left hemisphere with the creative and larger picture pattern-oriented right hemisphere, and we use them together, this sort of bicameral mind is much easier to spiritualize. Our intellect is able to connect to our higher intellect much easier. And a lot of this has to do with exercising our imagination, and this is where we can discover solutions to problems using the imagination. And the moon is representative of the sphere of Yesod, or the imaginal realm on the tree of life. In English, it's called foundation, this sphere, because our imaginations are kind of the foundation of the physical world. At least they are the foundation of the human world. our culture, our sciences, our beliefs, our laws and governments, like the things we create, our art, our clothes we wear, everything that creates our culture and our society has originated within our imaginations. It starts in our imaginations and then it manifests into the world. So there are a lot of other things that start in the imagination that then manifest in the world. So our imagination is essentially the foundation of the physical manifest world. And so there's a problem there, creating a problem in the physical world. It's manifesting as an issue there. So there's someone with a deep spiritual knowledge that will solve this problem. There's someone experienced in this who has an answer on how to apply a certain spiritual discipline or just a certain spiritual fact, an imaginal fact, that can be used to solve this problem. And that could be why the democratic option won't make sense, because most people don't understand these types of issues or where they originate or how. And the people who do generally learned it the hard way by experiencing this stuff themselves firsthand and developing or discovering that real foundational solution. So there's some guru type or some really experienced type of person who has a good piece of spiritual knowledge for you that's going to be very transformative at this time. And it seems a little hidden, a little obscured. Most people, it won't be aware of it. It'll be kind of under the surface, bit of a piece of occult spiritual information. But your heart will tell you if it's true or not. And then that spark of intuition will lift your mind to transcendental heights. And from those heights, you can develop within your imagination the solution that is right for you. I'm going to pull another card for you. What does Sagittarius need to know about the moon? A flame of fire and a tongue of fire. The multitude. The messenger. Gratitude. Gratium in Latin. So here we got a couple of oxen pulling a big old wagon of fruit. We got a pear tree, we got grapes and oranges and looks like roses on their stems in this big old cornucopia wagon that these oxen are pulling forward. Maybe the solution to this issue is cultivating a sense of gratitude. Now, I know we hear this a lot, especially in the new agey world, where people say like, oh, you have to feel gratitude for everything, and then your problems start to solve themselves. And hearing that a lot in the new age world can become kind of irksome, and because we hear it so often. But oftentimes it is true. Like, happiness is like a choice that we make. It's not really something that happens to us. I mean, things can happen in our life that make us feel happy. Sure, that can obviously happen. But in general, to have a sense of solid happiness that remains with us is to exercise your happiness muscle. It's to choose to feel happy. Like, as soon as you wake up in the morning, just kind of tell yourself, today I'm going to choose to feel happy. When you're bored and don't know what to do, just choose to feel happy. And, you know, sometimes even just forcing yourself to smile works, because these muscles have these electrical connections and subconscious connections that when we smile, our mind is like, oh, we're supposed to feel happy. And then we kind of just automatically feel happy just by doing that act. That's a good first step in practicing and exercising your happiness muscle, is just to choose to smile even when you feel like you don't want to, even when you're angry. What I like to do, one time I told my sister, when she was angry, I was like, just listen to some Christmas music. Like, you know, listen to Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas and try to stay angry. You know, it's like, it's impossible. You choose to put on that song, or just some song that brings you a sense of warmth and comfort and joy. For me and my family, it's just like the classics of Christmas music. It just brings us those feelings of warmth and joy. And just put it on your streaming service or your record player or whatever when you're feeling angry or miserable, and try to remain angry and miserable. You will feel like a fool for doing so. It is the funniest experiment to do this sort of thing, and I highly recommend it next chance you get. It's just next time you're fuming and frustrated and miserable, just put on "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," and it'll be the funniest thing, and you'll start cracking up and laughing. That's a great exercise for your happiness muscle. And the more you practice it, just choosing to be happy and cultivating it within yourself, even when you're miserable and angry and sad, and it's very, very difficult to start this practice, but it gets easier and easier and easier every time you do it. It only gets easier. So when you start to practice this, understand that's the hardest it will ever be. And from that point forward, it will simply be easier to choose to be happy and to feel grateful for what we have. Becomes a natural extension of choosing to feel happy. So perhaps that's an exercise you might be interested in. It's one that I do, and I have to work on it more. I'm always working on it. Sometimes I forget and I have big lapses in this practice, but I do find it to be extraordinarily simple and extraordinarily effective. And it's so great because it gets easier the longer you do it, the more you do it. The first bunch of times you do it are the hardest times. And so you can just look forward to the fact that it gets easier. Just like exercising a muscle, it gets stronger. It really does. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe there's something about oxen too. Maybe going and seeing like a nice piece of farmland or something will bring you some joy. Or go to like a petting zoo or something. I have a friend who loves petting zoos. She's in her 40s. Been going to petting zoos since she was a little girl, and she cannot get enough of them. She absolutely loves it. She reverts to a 6-year-old girl every time she goes. All right, one last thing. One last token for Sagittarius. We got gratitude, we got the moon, we got the messenger, we got the multitude, and we got tongues of fire. The messenger and the tongues of fire. So a tongue of fire in the more Near Eastern spiritual traditions, like Christian, Islamic, Judaic, Chaldean, Syriac traditions, Zoroastrian, tongue of fire represents like a message from God. It's like a tongue of fire dances upon a spiritually enlightened saint who then has some good stuff to say. So yeah, like a tongue of fire is definitely a symbol of messenger entities, or activity and energy. Entity. It's weird I wanted to say that. Maybe you're working with an oracle who's got some good advice for you. All right, what does Sagittarius need to know? The hearth. Little fireplace. Oh my God, so much fire here. And the number 12. So here we have the hearth. Well, I was talking about warmth and joy and family matters. Christmas. This is a very, homely, comforting, joyful little symbol here, the hearth. It's very easy to feel gratitude when the fire is lit and the hearth is warm. It's more difficult to feel gratitude when the fire is cold and you have, when the fire's out and there's no firewood. But then we have to choose to be happy anyway, right? And take it as an experience, an opportunity. Okay, now I gotta go get some firewood. I'm grateful for the experience of having to go out and get some firewood. Maybe I'll see a beautiful cardinal bird fly by, or I'll see something interesting out there while I'm gathering the firewood. And choosing to be grateful for that anyway. But here we have the lit fire, the hearth and home. So there's somebody close to you. Maybe this person who has this good advice for you is a family member, perhaps an elder, but perhaps not. I've met some very wise kids in my time, but I think there's someone probably within your very close circle, your biological family or your chosen family, who has this experience and this advice, which is good because you can probably open up to them and be vulnerable with them about this problem and not fear judgment. Which is a nice thing for us. So yeah, something that just struck me is like this. I didn't draw a chimney. This is like a smokeless fire, right? Now, smokeless fire is symbolic of very pure thoughts, very pure spirit. Something that is just true, just straight up a fact, a spiritual fact that can be consciously understood through the intellect or through intuition or through the feeling center, but something that can be understood by a human being in some way, whether it's intellectually, feeling, intuitively, whatever. It's a very clear bit of spiritual wisdom, very truthful, and very understandable. So here we're getting a message that is going to it's going to be like clear and obvious to you and truthful to you, and you'll be able to act on it very effectively without worrying about whether or not it will work, because it will be one of those tried and true things. The person sharing it with you will have done it, and it will have worked for them at some point in their past, and that's that. And this, whatever was hidden, it will be illuminated by this flame, by this tongue of flame, this flame of fire. And you'll have a sense of gratitude for being given this knowledge, and it will connect you to spiritual messengers, or the ability to gain spiritual wisdom like on demand, essentially. All right, Sagittarius, I think that's all the Oracle and I have for you tonight. I am very grateful that you decided to hang out with me. I always appreciate you stopping by. It was great to see you. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you next time.